Okay, let's start. On behalf of the Center for Chinese Studies at UH Manoa, I would like to welcome everyone to our CCS Fall 2022 webinar series. My name is Mingbao Yu from the Department of East Asian Languages and Literatures, where I teach 20th century Chinese literature, film, and culture. And I'm currently also serving as the CCS director and the organizer of this year's webinar series, with the kind assistance of the CCS Executive Committee and CCS Associate Director Ren Youmei, Dr. Cindy Ning. Today's session is being recorded and will be uploaded to our YouTube channel, where you can also find previously recorded webinar sessions in case you missed them. Our full program flyer for this semester can be found on the CCS website and Instagram, the links of which you can now see in the chat forum. I encourage you all to take a closer look at our program flyer because we have an impressive lineup of presentations coming up, including next week's faculty panel on how to read ancient Chinese philosophy, organized and moderated by CCS EC member Professor Franklin Perkins from UH Manoa's Philosophy Department. Today's session is the second talk in our series entitled Understanding China, and it features Professor Huiyao Wang, who is the founder and president of the NGO Center for China and Globalization, and we are indeed honored and delighted that he's joining us today from China. Professor Wang will be properly introduced by the moderator of today's session, Professor Victor Wei Huang from the Scheidler College of Business here at UH Manoa. We would like to thank and acknowledge the Center for China and Globalization and the Scheidler College of Business for the co-sponsorship of today's session. Before I introduce today's moderator, Professor Huang, let me remind you of some procedures for this session. Please feel free to use the chat forum for posting any technical or other queries, but use the Q&A tool for posting comments and questions about today's presentation, which will be answered by our speakers during the Q&A session. In order to accommodate everyone, we kindly ask that you please keep your comments concise and ask no more than 2 questions, so that we keep within the 30 minutes we have allocated to the Q&A session. We will try to take the questions in the order they have been submitted, but we might also synthesize and group together similar questions so that we save time and make room for other comments and queries. We also reserve the right to dismiss comments and questions that are not relevant or civil in tone. After today's presentation, you will receive a brief survey, and we would greatly appreciate your constructive feedback. And now, it's an honor and pleasure to introduce Professor Victor Wei Huang, who is the John and Sue Dean Distinguished Professor of Finance at UH Manoa's Scheidler College of Business, and currently the chair of the Finance Department. He earned his BA in Economics from Nanjing University in China and his PhD in Finance from Georgia Tech. His research interests include empirical asset pricing, international finance, Chinese financial markets, and corporate governance. His research in Chinese financial markets was included by Harvard Law School in its online forum on corporate governance and financial regulation, and was awarded the Sun Yefang Financial Innovation Prize, which is China's highest prize award for financial research and named after the pioneering economist Sun Yefang, who advocated market-oriented reforms. His research was also featured in the Wall Street Journal Smart Money. So, without further ado, let me turn over to Professor Huang.
Thank you, Dr. Yu, for your kind introduction. It is my great pleasure to introduce Dr. Henry Huiyao Wang, who is the founder and president of Center for China and Globalization, known as CCG, the leading Chinese non-governmental think tank that ranked 64th worldwide. In addition, he was former counselor to China State Council, vice chairman of China Association for International Economic Cooperation under the Ministry of Commerce, vice chairman of China Public Relations Association, a director of Chinese People's Institute of Foreign Affairs and Pacific Relations Association, a director Director of China National Committee for Pacific Economic Cooperation, both organizations under the supervision of Ministry of Foreign Affairs. He is now the Dean of Institute of Development Studies of Southwestern University of Finance and Economics of China, and a member of Advisory Committee for Global Competence Development of Tsinghua University. Currently, he is a steering committee member of the Paris Peace Forum and also sits on the advisory board of Duke Kunshan University and Rich Ivy Business School. He served as desk officer in the Ministry of Foreign Economic Relations and Trade in the early 1980s. Then he worked as Director Asia for SNC Lavalin in Montreal, and was also appointed by the Quebec government as the Chief Trade Representative of Quebec Government Office in Hong Kong in early 1990s. Dr. Wang pursued his PhD studies at University of Western Ontario and University of Manchester. He was a senior fellow at Harvard Kennedy School, a visiting fellow of Brookings Institute, a senior fellow at Asia Pacific Foundation of Canada, and a policy fellow of IZA Institute of Labor Economics. He served as an advisor for IOM of UN, as a thought leader of international relations, global governance, international business, global migration, global investment and trade, and also oversees Chinese and Chinese think tanks, etc. He has published nearly 100 works, including China and Globalization series and many others. And also, I also noticed that he published in academic finance journals as well. And Dr. Wang is a frequent speaker of international events such as World Economic Forum, Munich Security Conference, Paris Peace Forum, WTO Public Forum, Monk Debate, Berlin Forum, Policy Forum, and Milken Global Forum. He's also a frequent contributing writer for the op-eds to South China Morning Post, Financial Times, Bloomberg, New York Times, and others. Without further ado, I'd like to welcome Dr. Wang. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Professor Huang, for your kind introduction, and also thank to Professor Yue for opening up this webinar series and the dialogue series that I'm very pleased to be enjoying you today. I mean, University of Hawaii is really a great university. I've been to Hawaii quite a few times. I'm really impressed with the the place and also university and also East West Center there. So really a great honor to be here, and I'm really pleased to speak to you from Beijing. We're now all geared up for the big political event in China now. 20th Party Congress is this week, actually, weekend. But I would very much like to take this time, maybe a half hour, 40 minutes, to really give some introduction of what we've been doing lately as a think tank, but also share some of our research and, of course, our latest thought on how China and the globalization can work out. So I really appreciate the opportunity. I would like to share my screen now, if you allow me to work out this. So the seminar today actually is the China and the world, and how China integrated in the world and contribute to it. So basically, actually 2018, I edited a book called Handbook on China and Globalization. China and globalization is always a big topic, and China benefits from the globalization. China is the driver of the globalization, and now China is now trying to be more active on the globalization. But of course, we are now having this deglobalization, and globalization is at the crossroads. So how can we do that? That's where I hope to share some of my views. But basically, my today's topic will be divided into three parts. First, I would like to give you some background about our think tank. As Professor Huang mentioned, we are a top ranked 100 think tank by the University of Pennsylvania for a number of years now, and we ranked at top 64. And we are also the only think tank in China that has been granted a special consultant status. So we have recently took a visit overseas, and then we, as a think tank, we do a lot of research, and I would like to introduce some of our latest research that we just had on China and globalization. And thirdly, is where I probably will spend a bit more time, is on China's role in this contributing to globalization, because there's a lot of question about what China will play, particularly China's 20th Party Congress is coming up. So where China is going is on many people's mind, but I think we can probably touch upon that as well. So basically, I would like to start with the part one, China. Our first overseas trip, that it took us at the end of the June to July. We visited 6 countries. And then we actually, conducted 70 events and meetings and roundtables. It was very, effective visit. But I think, that's where I want to make a point, is that we already have, almost 3 years pandemic. I mean, the situation is getting very tight. Bilateral relations and multilateral relations all at risk if we do not start people-to-people, face-to-face meetings. So that's really very, very important. That's where we took the first China think tank delegation to visit overseas. It's in almost 3 years. So that's really, some media report that as groundbreaking or ice-breaking since the pandemic. We felt is really important to do that. So we met many people there. This trip we met international organizations, current leaders and former leaders, like UN, World Bank, and Munich Security Conference, Paris Peace Forum, all really important. And of course, we also meet Chinese ambassadors and Chinese affairs in US, in Europe, and Asia. So that's very important to know what they are thinking while they are in those host countries. So it's very important to touch base. It's also a research tour for us, study tour for us. And then most importantly is that we have actually, as a think tank, we met so many think tank, top leaders. We met president of the Peters Institute, president of Atlantic Council, honorary chair of Brookings Institution, president of CSIS, president of Stimson, Center, and of course, many think tanks actually, fellows and you name it. So it's a very, very comprehensive visit that we meet all the other think tanks, Carnegie, Asia Institute, Asian Policy Institute, and Council for Foreign Relations, and things like, and the European think tank. So it's very important that we found during this trip that, if the globalization, if China wants to have a better understanding, we really need to communicate, need to dialogue. Of course, one of the things we found is that the sentiment on China is getting more negative, and then there seems to be more misunderstanding, also mistrust. But that's precisely, I think we need to really start this dialogue. And actually, when we meet them, they even including the former current government officials in the US, in the Europe countries, in Asia, it's exactly, they felt that we need to strengthen this dialogue. So I think that's really very, very important. And and also, furthermore, I think that's one of the key areas that we met so many multinational organizations, CEOs, executives, and of course, trade associations. It's that, in the past, we always say, business is the cornerstone of the bilateral relation or multilateral relations. But this time, through, only after, almost 3 years of isolation and pandemic devastating, we find that, people-to-people exchange is also, if not more so, the cornerstone of the exchanges. So it's very important that we get this message. We are sending the message that that we are coming out. Chinese delegation, first one of the think tanks, coming out to meet all of you. But also we express strong desire to welcome our foreign friends and the colleagues to visit China, to visit CCG, and so this is very, very important message that we're sending. We also had quite a bit of media interviews, coverage. We talked to the BBC, Forbes, and many other the media actually in those countries. It's quite impressive. There's also quite a bit of coverage. Even when we come back to China, we had a big coverage of the report. So I think that kind of coverage is good, because we want to let people know there are possibilities for us to embark on these exchanges. And the coverage is really important. That we have so many Chinese think tanks, academic institutes are ready to go. I know that there are some people already started to visit overseas now, like the former dean of the Peking University International School is now in the U.S. now. We just hosted, and also we had a meeting with Scott Kennedy, advisor of the CSIS, visited physically with us, about 10 days ago. So you see, we trigger this. We hope so to trigger these exchanges, so that we can have the importance of enhanced understanding and exchanges. So this is really what I want to just give you some background about Center for China and Globalization. So this is very important, that we have to start the dialogue and the business. Now I come to the second part of my talk, is basically, China and globalization research at a think tank. So CCG is a think tank we established about almost 15 years ago. Now we are ranked top think tanks, not only in China, but also in the world. We had about almost 100 staff and research staff and working staff. And we have head office in Beijing, we had office in Chengdu and Guangzhou and Hangzhou and Shanghai, quite a few places in China. But the thing is that we focus more on the globalization studies. Initially, we focus a lot on global migration, global talent mobility. That's where we start a lot of research. We published the blue books of global talent development for 10 years in a row at Chinese Social Science Academy Press. And then, of course, we do we started publishing many English books as well. So I would like to say that one of the key research areas that we actually focused on is on the China and globalization. We actually, last year, we started a book series just called China Globalization Book Series. And then, so with the book series, hopes to create a balanced global perspective by gathering the views of highly influential policymakers, practitioners, and opinion leaders. And so it's published by famous, well-known Springer Nature publisher, world-renowned, and we publish as an open source, and now it's already a download 2.5 million, or 2.4 million. It's quite impressive. So the first book, basically, we touch upon is that, we actually, last year when we published this book, we called it Consensus or Conflict. Unfortunately, today we see the war in Ukraine going on. We are already in conflict. That's very, very, very sad. So basically, this book will talk about China and globalization in the 21st century, that we want to bring leading international scholars and policymakers to explore the challenges. And then this book is really get very well response. We have quite a lot of endorsement from people from, for example, from senior, vice president of AIB. We have also Angus Deaton. He's the Nobel laureate at the Princeton. He gave a very good endorsement. We also have a Ram Meter, professor at the Oxford. and people in the industry, chairman of NXP Semiconductors, and of course Sir Andrews Thomas Chen, and also chair of the board of governors of Brickshek, University of London. Many people like that, Tim Classful, at the Cambridge University China Center. So those people actually read this book and give a high endorsement on that. And so there's many more. I mean, altogether over a dozen people actually endorsed this book, all from international background and different perspective. But but most important, of course, this book we had various angles. It's not a book written by Chinese, but it's a book written by mostly, we have Chinese representatives, but mostly by international experts, global opinion leaders, former politicians, and chair of different institutes to contribute. So it's very, very impressive book that I would really very grateful that to have contributed by so many people. So this book is I have done this with my co-editor Alex Michi, and so it's the first book of its kind, but we found this is very, very good. So we have many people contribute as the authors, professors, global CEOs, and former prime minister, former WTO, the direct general, former U.S. TPP negotiators, and people like that. So it's quite a wide, comprehensive book there. So and also we had former Vice Minister, Minister of Foreign Affairs, also joined us from China, joined us as well. So this is a very interesting book. I highly recommend people take a look. That we can have a great view about how they view China and globalization, and how they can really give a good look at this. Also in this, we have many academics like Jeff Lehman, New York University Shanghai president. We had Kishore Mahbani, former dean of the Singapore Lee Kuan Yew School of the Government, and very unfortunately we have James McGann. He's the director of a think tank at University of Pennsylvania, and then this was his last piece, and he passed away at the end of last year. So it's really very sad for that. But other than that, I think we had a very good contribution. We also had Joseph Nye, Jim O'Neill, all those Edmund Phillips, Nobel laureates, and many people. I'm really grateful for their contributions. So this is the book that we have actually. You can get a glimpse of what we are actually doing on that. The other book we actually, it's in my edited series, is Asian 21st Century. That was written by Kishore Mahbani. And then this book actually has got download over 2 million. It broke the record of Springer's online downloads. And it's extremely popular, in Asia and of course in globally. So this is really another great book. And you can see we focus more on the business, because business is in China is always the probably the last largest market potentially in the world now, with 500 million middle class. So how global multinational view this market? What about CEOs? What about chambers, presidents, executives, and how they see this trade war? How they see this U.S.-China rivalry? Populism and all those threats. We're seeing that, constantly coming, all kind of disruptions. But how our business community is really working on that. So this is a book on that. We had a very good also feedback about 20, almost 30 executives contribute to this book. Another book we actually did is a very interesting one. It's never done before. Is that we want to know what ambassadors thinking, because since we cannot have the people-to-people exchange, and there's no foreigners coming, ambassadors in China are treasures now. They are really highly sought after by all the people, but we want to know what they are thinking on China. So we got 27 ambassadors to contribute to this book. Again, a very interesting perspective from all those ambassadors to China. We have many ambassadors that they are highly contributing, including the EU ambassador from Canada, ambassador from Japan, Ireland and Portuguese, African Union. So it's great that for the first time that we have gathered so many ambassadors to contribute to this book, and so this is really a good experiment, but very successful. So we would like to continue to do that after this, first ambassador collections on their view, particularly during the pandemic, during this no people exchanges era. So this will go down in history as a record of how they view each other. The final book is a book of mine. I actually contributed to a book on the Chinese perspective on China development and role in the world. I call this book "The Ebbs and Flow of Globalization." Again, focus on globalization and China's evolving role. I'm saying, because China, as it grows, becomes second largest economy in the world, contributed over 30% of global GDP growth, and then also the second largest donor to the United Nations and all those global initiatives China launched, like a Belt and Road, Global Development Initiative, Global Security Initiative. There's many things China is trying to contribute to the global narrative and global policies in the domain of what China views the world. So this is important. I found this time the 20th Party Congress gets so much attention. We're getting interviews from BBC, Bloomberg, and CGTN, many channels requested that they want to focus on this Party Congress. So this shows how what happened in China is really impact the world. So for all this book, I mean, I'm doing little advertise. You can go to the Springer website. You can download free. Most books are free, so it's good reference. Now, finally, I'd like to talk about the China's role in strengthening globalization. You see, after all those part one, part two, I talk about our think tank background. I talked about how international experts, think tanks and ambassadors and multinational view China and China's view of the world. Part three is really, I want to emphasize a little bit, is China's role in strengthening the globalization. So I just recently contributed an article to a famous think tank in France, Institut Montaigne, and basically what I'm saying is that could reshaping the world order ushering a return of economic globalization. Because I think the world is very dangerous now with the what's going on in the Russian-Ukraine war and escalating, and it's getting very dangerous now. We're facing a nuclear threat. So this is really very dangerous. So what has been true in the past 75 years after 76 years of Bretton Woods system, the world, UN, World Bank, and WTO, and all those has been driving economic globalization that we all benefit. We're all blended. We're all intertwined. Now we are seeing that falling apart. We have decoupling going on. We have a trade war going on. We have so many things that separate us. The only thing I'm still a bit optimistic is that we see the student flow is still very strong. China, for the last 2 or 3 years, even the pandemic, for example, last year, US issued over 110,000 visas, student visa, for Chinese students studying in the US. And there's more visa issued even to Europe in different countries. UK got a big increase. But unfortunately, we hope to welcome more international students coming to China when China has contained this virus to some degree. So really, that people-to-people exchange we still see, but we want to see more trade. Of course, that is happening. China last year actually had over 30% of its trade increase. China is supplying the world. China is really become a global engine in terms of providing all the basic goods and needs of a lot of made in China. Even U.S. The elections, the Trump toys are manufactured here in China, and then recently the UK that got a lot of British flags manufactured in China. So you see, China is doing a lot of manufacturing still going on, but that economic globalization, is that we are at the crossroad? Can we go back to the economic globalization when the political, geopolitical deglobalization is devastating the economic globalization? That's basically my article was talking about. So you can see that Russian war in Ukraine has accelerated the trend towards a new world order, basically. And what I'm saying is that China would not be a disruptor. China would not change the existing. China would like to upgrade. China would like to sustain, and China would like to improve and like to contribute more. So we see the world order after the Russian-Ukraine conflict and also this major pandemic devastating. We probably see a more multipolar globalization and more decentralization. That could be the case. So we see like RCEP become the largest free trade agreement. We have seen CPTPP. We see there's quite a few blocks like African Continental Free Trade Agreement, and we see Latin American. So we see more fragmented, maybe more regionalization of globalization. But China's role in this is really to not going to change the world order. China has always said China doesn't want to change the global order. China wants to enhance it, participate, because China benefits from the existing global order. Why China wants to change that? So how can we restart economic globalization, and then reshaping the world order is really improve that order, basically, to create a new Bretton Woods system, probably. So let's say we are at a new Bretton Woods moment. How to enhance, improve, and upgrade. That's the main message I can tell. So I have in that, in my latest paper, I actually proposed several recommendations. Number one is really to reform the WTO, because WTO is really the engine of the world economics in the last 7 decades. First the GATT and now the WTO. So there's also many new areas like digital economy, then all those the high-tech area, artificial intelligence. There's many areas that is not covered. So we hope that we can cover that. But I think we can also study the competitive neutrality. We can really talk about SOE subsidy. Maybe in China, SOE has done a great deal. You lift 800 million people out of poverty. But internationally, we can follow the international rules. So it could be a differentiation on that. So WTO is actually in crisis because of the appellate body was blocked by the US. Still no judges there. So we hope that we can do that with developing countries. I'm glad to see the WTO ministerial meeting, the fishery agreement has been reached. And also China has proposed a plastic emission ban to the ocean that by 2050 we should eliminate that. I have given that proposal 3 years ago at WTO with to 10 WTO ambassadors that we proposed that. So I'm glad to see 70 countries almost has signed up to that initiative. So I hope that more breakthrough can be really made there. That's number one. And number two is that China is basically busy building economic alliance. China has built, for example, the Belt and Rail Initiative. China has joined RCEP. China is applying to join CPTPP. Has already established a working group to join DIPA, Digital Partnership, and also CAI. China has signed with EU at the end of 2020 on China-EU investment agreement. treaty. So that maybe we could revive that. I know November will be the time for the parliamentary and the Commission of European to review whether to renew this sanction or not. Maybe let's all live that. China and EU can live that sanction. So I can really hope that the Kai can come through. And then, the third recommendation is that we should promote more multilateral bank cooperation framework. For example, AIB is really a great example that joined by over 100 countries, including all European countries. And, that is really the great needs that we need now in the world with big deficit of infrastructure. China is really the biggest, probably infrastructure developer in the world. We have, the total length of the high-speed railway in China is equal to the next 10 countries combined. And, so I hope that, that kind of experiments, networks, 4G, 5G stations has reached over 6 million across China. Anywhere it goes, well connected, well transformed. China has the, out of the 10 largest port in the world, 7 of them are in China. So those are really China experience can be shared, and AIB can be a good contributor to that. And perhaps we could upgrade AIB to GIB, to a Global Infrastructure Investment Bank. We can work with World Bank, ADB, and many other banks. So this is my third recommendation. And then my fourth recommendation is that we should promote more economic and trade cooperation. So I understand that U.S. now coming to Japan, President Biden actually come to Japan early this year, and then actually initiated the called Indo-Pacific Economic Framework for Prosperity. So if it's for economic framework in the Indo-Pacific region, it's hard to imagine it excludes the one of the largest economy in the region, second largest in the world of China. So if it's really economic focused framework, why not get China to be part of that? China can join that, and just like China has applied to join CPTPP, initially TPP, also designed by the U.S. So I think that not only U.S. but also some Asian countries, Latin American countries for TPP. But I think the same principle and reasoning is there. If it's economic framework, let's get together. So we hope to get more economic alliance rather than the military alliance. We have NATO now getting very active. We have Five Eyes. We have AUKUS. We have Quad, and now we even had the IPAF. So what I'm saying is that let's get more economic framework, and global initiatives and global development, rather than we are all obsessed with the security alliance. So let's get more economic alliance. And the same point is for my number 5 recommendation is that we should really increase Asia-Pacific economic cooperation. So CPTPP is great. China wants to join that. China wants to join DIPA. And I also said, I recommend, why not China join IPAF? So we can all really work on, have more platform to talk so that we can concentrate more on the economic development rather than we concentrate more on the security development. So this is really a good sign to that. And also the digital economy as well, that United States, maybe can be more open on Chinese companies, and Chinese company can be more open on U.S. companies, because now, for example, Huawei is not a government, not a SOE, TikTok, WeChat, all the same, but the U.S. seems wants to restrict the operation. So I think that it's surprise for a very free, most free market in the world to do that. But I think also China could do the same. We can open Google, Facebook, Twitter, and digital company if US is open Huawei. So and other companies. So maybe we should get those digital companies to work together. I propose to have a D20. We have the G20 is going to happen next month in Bali, Indonesia. On the G20, you have a B20, Business 20, you have a T20, Think Tank 20, Y20, young people 20. But why can't we have a D20? let's get 20 largest digital companies and come together and do that. So those things. And final recommendation I would take, what I would like to talk about is this, G3 basically. We have three largest economy blocks in the world: U.S., China, and European Union. So let's have a G3 proposed, so that let's not get West versus rest or West versus China. We all have a different independence and different views, but U.S., China, and EU are three largest economy in the world, and then so why can't G3 get together for the global South development? Because each has also initiated the infrastructures plans, like BI from China, B3W from US, Global Gateway from EU. But let's all work together. Let's get the G3 to work on this infrastructure, global South development, and also EU can mediate somewhat the China-US relations, from further deteriorating. So I think that the G3 concept is with the global South is really what I propose in the latest proposal. Of course, we can also have a G3 summit if we need. So I hope that we can really, the whole world can get together peacefully in prosperity, and let's really reduce and mitigate all those dangers. So finally, CCG would really like to help to do that, and we love to work with our colleagues and friends around the world, and we appreciate the University of Hawaii Center for China Studies and also the Business School Initiative. I'm really happy to share some of the views, and I stop here. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Wang, for your very interesting presentation. So I'm looking at the Q&A. At the moment, we don't have any questions. So I have just one question about the WTO. So you mentioned about the reform in WTO. On the other hand, I also see through your presentation, there are lots of regional trade pact or treaties, such as CPTPP and IPEF, and then also, for example, China-EU investment agreement. Do you see this regional economic treaty or trade pact as a substitute for WTO, as a trend to replace WTO?
Yeah. Thank you, Victor. This is an excellent question, and what actually I see now is that because WTO, particularly in the last during the Trump era, and also for the last 10-20 years, since the Doha round, I mean, almost 20 years, WTO is getting nowhere, and WTO has contributed, significantly in the past, but recent 10-20 years, it's really very, very slow, and we haven't really concluded everything. The principle for WTO is basically you need to have agreed by consensus, which means 164 members. If any members does not agree with any proposal, that proposal is not going there. So for WTO, they are having a lot of now they want to push the agenda forward. They have a polylateral arrangement. Countries can initiate some proposals like free trade agreement. Finally, we got this through. And I know there's a digital proposal proposed by a number of countries: U.S., EU, China, in. Still hasn't really completed that yet. And I was talking about plastic emission to the ocean. There's many countries already agreed on that. So there's probably also true is that if there's follow the trend, if a majority of countries has been on board, then it'd be easy to sell to the whole members. And so that is really what WTO is facing. I know China initiated a proposal on facilitation of investment and trade, which is still also in discussion. But since the WTO has been really not effective function in the last 10, 20 years, you see a more active regional going on, and that's where they started the TPP, which by Singapore, New Zealand, Chile, and Brunei, and then later on, U.S. joined and then took over and made it very liberalized trade agreement, because it's smaller country, easy to get consensus. Same is true for the RCEP, where China, ASEAN, Japan, Australia, New Zealand, 15 countries comes in, and South Korea, and then they really quickly, after a few years, they reached agreement. So what I'm saying is that you also see African Intercontinental Free Trade Agreement, and then you see the Latin American, they have a Pacific Alliance. So it's probably on the one hand there's more pressure given to the WTO to reform and to catch up. For example, the TPP, CPTPP now led by Japan, Australia, since U.S. Created that plan, is actually now joined by applying to join. Now UK is applying to join. It's already beyond the Asia Pacific region, and I think even probably EU can be part of the CPTPP. So if the WTO is not really working that well, then maybe those regional mini WTO is in the making. But I think this is good though, because I think that there is some competition, CPTPP and RCEP and even DIPA, and the European Union have some many free FTA as well. So I think that if we can't get the whole thing moving, let's move partially in different parts of the world, and eventually the sum of the parts are equal or larger on the whole. So I would be optimistic and encouraging those local, regional polylateral agreement, and then so that really can pave the way for the future reform of the WTO. Because for example, in the CPTPP, the digital courses, the technology, labor standard, environmental standards are all much higher than the WTO standards. So I think those are good things that they can experiment, they can pilot out, and then eventually they will benefit WTO. So I wouldn't mind there will be more regional free trade agreement, and as long as it's open. So CPTPP is open. I hope that US can come to join RCEP too, and UK can. Let's all cross membership, and China can join IPAF. Let's not build in the camps or blocks that prevent each other to join. That is no good. Let's really also, we have to practice the principle of openness and liberalization.
Thank you. So you mentioned about a new idea, D20. That's very interesting. International Data Alliance, and encourage all those digital companies to move forward to sort of like collaborating to some extent. So do you think this should be a government brokered sort of like a collaboration, or it is purely up to the individual, the private business to sort of like figure out how to, collaborate? In my opinion, when these digital information companies, when they cross border to do business in other countries, perhaps the government approval is actually a critically important step. So I think the government has lot of kind of the duties in this area. So what do you think this D20 can be promoted?
I think now the digital economy is really at the top of agenda, because the whole world is operating on the digital now, and we have anywhere you go is digitalized. So that is really the trend that we're seeing right now. But unfortunately, the standards are different, the different laws and regulations are everybody making on its own, and there's still no standardized. There's no digital organization look up that. I'm on a digital steering committee study group led by former WTO General Pascalami. And we have many industry people coming to that, and experts and trade policy expert as well, government officials. But again, I think certainly we need a government. I mean, we need a government to come to grips, and we have to get them to talk at the WTO level. I mean, one of the very interesting things is about this DIPA that we have formed a kind of a regional organization, a treaty that. Singapore, New Zealand, and Chile are the initiators of digital partnership agreements. So it's like when they started the TPP, those smaller countries. But China has showed a great interest to join that. And President Xi officially announced that. Chinese Minister of Foreign Trade has actually officially applied. And China just announced about 2 months ago that China formed a working group to join this DIPA. So I hope that US, EU can all come to this new platform and initiated by those neutral countries, and then let's have a platform to work on that. But I think it's important for the industry to work together. So the reason I propose D20 is to get 20 largest digital companies, Google, Facebook, Twitters, and Alibaba, Tencent, or Baidu, whatever. 20 largest digital companies coming together. Yahoo, I think the business community, they speak the same language. They have a better understanding. They all have its bottom line. They share the business language. So if the 20 largest digital company in the world can reach some consensus, have the industry opinions, then they can reflect to their respective government, and they reflect that to the digital organization like DIPA. So that would be really great to form the latest new standards for the world, because we are now lacking this kind of standard. How to protect privacy, what's the transparency, how government should do and not do, and I mean, there's also issue of digital sovereignty, because China maybe emphasizes a bit more on digital sovereignty. EU emphasizes about digital privacy, and US maybe emphasizes digital openness. So we have how to reconcile all those differences. We probably need the companies to come to talk, and then they have all the business in different parts of the world. They know the best. If they can agree upon something, it'd be great for the government to adopt. So that's where my idea of this D20 comes from. And I think if we have a T20 think tank, have a 20, why can't we have a D20? So I hope that before the G20 we can get this idea come across.
Thank you. Okay, so we encourage questions from the audience. You mentioned about several books, very interesting, and all those things are free for downloading. One of the books I remember you mentioned is China and the World in a Changing Context, and you invited many ambassadors to China to talk about their opinion about the changing world. I see the list includes many ambassadors from developing countries as well as from developed countries such as Japan. So do you see strikingly different opinions between the developing country ambassadors and the developed country ambassadors?
The book is really, as I indicated, is really during this pandemic time. We have no foreign dignitary statesman visit or leaders visit, and let's focus on ambassadors. They are representing their country very well. So the idea is to get as a variety of different countries of the views to reflect in this book. But even there are some similarities, there are some differences. I mean, the similarities is that we all need to develop, we need to fight climate change, we all need to strengthen the bilateral trade and investment. We all need to resume people-to-people exchange. So those are common views, of course. But of course, you can understand, and then the global South maybe still focus a bit more on the development issues, whereas developed countries focus a bit more on those standards and global governance and China-U.S. relations and or bilateral relations, how that's going to affect, and what are the good cooperation, what are the areas we need to improve. So it's quite a balanced variety of views, but I think that there's a lot of similarities, but also there's some differences, as I indicated. So it's great to read this book, and of course every ambassador has this very unique views, and it's all appreciated, it's all welcomed.
Thank you.
Yes.
Yes.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
Yeah, sure.
Thank you, Professor Wang, for your very informative presentation. And I think this book series is a great resource for everybody who seeks to understand China better. I have a question regarding Biden's Indo-Pacific initiative and policy. We actually had Professor Zhu Zhiqun from Bucknell University in our CCS webinar series last week, and he talked about this Biden's Indo-Pacific strategy and policy, right? Which he mentioned that actually began under President Trump. But as you know, I think it's pretty well known that President Biden is pursuing that. And as far as I understand, the Indo-Pacific strategy and policy does not include China, right? But it's become a very big topic, particular in place like Hawaii, because we are right in the Pacific. So I was wondering what you thought about that, if you could talk about it, because in one of your slides that you mentioned earlier, which I thought was very informative, you mentioned that there seems to be this sort of competitive tension between US and China. And in one of your later slides, you mentioned that China's position is not to change the world, but to participate in it, right? Which is also what your book series does. So I was wondering if you could just share with us, the view and, what, or maybe if, China's view on this Indo-Pacific initiative that specifically excludes China. But I think Taiwan is included, right? Or it's not so specific, but China is definitely excluded from it. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Thank you, Professor Yue. And basically, what I propose is that I really do not see as a healthy trend that now in the recent 5 to 10 years we see more military and security alliance coming up. For example, we see NATO has been expanding, has been strengthened. We see Five Eyes countries of Anglo-Saxon and English-speaking countries are also getting more tight, and now they even want to invite South Korea to be part of their intelligence system. And then we see US, UK, and Australia focus on our nuclear submarine alliance called AUKUS. And then we see also the more security-oriented mini NATO Asia of India, Japan, US, and Australia. So it's really not really a great trend we've been seeing lately, and that will increase in the tensions and the risk of the region. Whereas China, basically, for the last 5 years, China is focused more on economic development. China, about 12 years ago, China launched this Belt and Road Initiative 10 years ago. And then China actually, proposed that is joined RCEP negotiation for a long time. And now finally, they formed the largest free trade agreement in the world now. Account 1/3 of the global population, GDP, and export, and also China is really wants to expand on that, and sign this comprehensive agreement on investment with with the European Union. It's already signed and concluded, but because of sanctions, and it has delayed. But China also applying to join CPTPP, even all its standards, criteria are negotiated and set by the U.S. and other Western countries, ASEAN. But China still wants to join that. Doesn't because it's made by the U.S. China wants to get out of it. And same is true now for the DPA. Digital regional partnership agreement, China also officially applied and a very strong desire to join. So it shows that China openness to embrace the economic globalization, whereas, I mean, there's not any interest of China to do this military or security type of organization. Even Shanghai organization, Shanghai Cooperation Organization also has a several the news statement coming out of last month. There's about environment, there's about climate change, there's about the digital free trade. So it's focused a lot more on economic as well. So the only economic initiative we see coming out of the U.S. after TPP is this IPEF, Indo-Pacific Economic Framework. But then, you know, it could be a good thing if it's really open, it's not exclude anybody. But what the U.S. is doing, coming to Japan, Korea, and announce this, and invite a number of companies into that, and even have a ministerial summit for IPEF for some time already. But China is not there. So I would see that it'd be great if it's economic. If China is the second largest economy in the world, if China is the largest trading nation with 130 countries, I don't see why the reason China cannot be there. I mean, just like China applied to join TPP, initially also said TPP was designed to contain China or to make China different. So in this, but TPP at that time, they have a good excuse. They say it's all very developed countries, very well-developed trade nations. But even Vietnam can join TPP. I mean, now this time with IPEF, basically they had all the countries wants to join in the region. Even India is part of that. So I think for the conditions for China to join is absolutely qualified, but it's just excluded. So now that gives us more thinking, like now on semiconductor issues. Right. There's decoupling. There's many other circles forming. Excluding China. So this is not healthy. I see this not displaying the competitive advantage of each country, and also that could potentially exclude those companies from those countries to the largest market in the world, like China. So I think we should really work together rather than separate into different camps.
Right. In one of your slides, actually, you mentioned, right, China should encourage more foreign companies to work in China, and then America should open its market to Chinese companies, right? I was wondering because I think right in the early 90s there were many foreign companies that went to China, right? They were interested in opening, but then I think there was a period, maybe around the turn of the century, that a lot of companies then withdrew. Right? They had been in China for a while and then they left. So now in one of your suggestions, and you just elaborated this cooperation that's necessary, and that, each country should open their market and invite foreign companies. What needs to change in China for foreign companies to maybe regain confidence or be motivated again to go to China? I'm not an economist, but I'm just following the general trend, right? Yeah.
No, good question. I think basically that China actually is still very open to the foreign companies. China stick to this open door policy that become a national policy. Of course, there's some difficulties in some parts of China. Some local government may not practice open policy that well, but in general, I think China has done relatively well. For example, since last year, China has its new foreign investment law in place, January of 2021, and overcome many the difficulties. For example, you hear a lot of complaint in the past that China is IPR issues or things like that, or stealing the technology issues. It's getting less heard now because the reason for that is that China has more Fortune 500 company now than any countries in the world, including U.S. Chinese companies also have IPR concerns. I mean, there's no reason for China not going to protect that. China is the largest patent applicant in the world, more than US. So China actually wants to do that. So same is a benefit that can be shared by the Chinese company if they tighten the IPR protection. And the same also, I mean, the so-called forced technology transfer is because in the past they have the joint venture agreement and percentage requirement that is allowed by WTO, and that is really open. But many companies interpret that as a forced JV and forced technology. So now China has relaxed many JV up threshold, and so for example, automakers now in China can have a majority or even 100%. Like Tesla, they have 100% clean vehicle manufacturing in China, and now become the largest clean vehicle producers in the world, and even export many of them. So I think that momentum is still there. I mean, talking about investment, BMW just had a 75 majority ownership. We had the Bossi from Germany just invested the 10 billion euro project in Guangdong. So since it opened up, there's about 70,000 US company registered or operating in China, generating 700 billion revenues for US companies. And for example, in Europe, the same. There's 5,000 German companies in China. So I still see China as a big market with 400 to 500 million middle class, and definitely in the next 5 to 10 years, China is going to be the largest market in the world. So there could be challenges, difficulties, COVID, lockdowns, and here there. But eventually, when China resumes, when China opened up again, it will be all the synergies there, transportation, internet. 280 million college-educated talents in China. It's the best upstream, downstream, and all the logistic supply chains is all in good place. So I would see China is irreplaceable for a long time to come, and we have to give confidence in that. And China will be the stabilizer for the world economy.
Great. You mentioned the COVID lockdown, right? Which of course has affected many countries. The economy is very bad. How badly has it affected the economy in China?
Well, I think certainly, has an impact because, CCG, every year we do a joint event with World Bank. The World Bank every year, they release their global economic outlook forecast. So we did 2 or 3 years in a row with World Bank. For example, this year, the World Bank project China first 5.1% GDP growth. And then that's when we had the first event, a release event with them. The only release event the World Bank did outside Washington with CCG. And then the second release we had them, they said is about 4.1%. And now it's 2.8. So I would guess maybe this year, we can still achieve 3 to 4%, but short of the target of 5.5 that NPC proposed earlier this year. So that is a challenge. But again, I think China, because China is such a big country, 1.4 billion population. If we did like US, if we got 1% people affected. That would be tens of millions of people are going to suffer. So it's enormous political risk that no government in China can bear that.
Right.
So I think they have a bit more tight policy. But again, the virus can be changing, and there could be more deadly virus, storm China again. And if that comes, China probably is the best prepared in the world.
Right.
China didn't lie flat, but China really has developed methodology of a massive testing, quarantine, fast tracing, and wipe out the virus whenever they find it. So they develop their own methodology. But I think how to optimize that while we contain the virus but develop the economy as much as we can. That is the challenge China still has. And I think China probably will relax because, for example, Beijing announced on November 6th, we're going to have the Beijing International Marathon resumed after two years stopped. And then we already have Hong Kong, 0 to 3, basically is almost open.
Right.
And then probably totally open 0 to 0 after Party Congress. So if Hong Kong with a similar densely populated area can achieve that, I don't see the reason why China would not relax its policy as time goes on. So I'm optimistic, and I think China would find a better way to do that.
Okay, great. Yes, Professor Huang, do you have one more question? Because we're almost at the end of our time.
Yes, but I'm looking at the Q&A, so I don't see any. Oh, okay, actually there's a question posted here. Okay, so this question is from one of our audience, Li Lunding, and the question is, it's a privilege to hear a think tank scholar close to China's top power, so-called, to give an update on China and the world. How do you evaluate it, the BRI today? There's lots of naysayers from the Western think tanks that blame China for the economic woes in Sri Lanka, for instance. A benefit or debt trap? Thanks for your comment.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Thank you for raising that question. Also, Professor Huang. And yeah, I think that Belt and Road Initiative launched in 2013, I think, by President Xi, is really a landmark of the last decade of the current government. That they had the first time they have a global initiative. I mean, in the past, China opened up for 40-some years now, but in the first 30-some years, China hasn't launched this massive global initiative. But then for the last 10 years, China launched this global initiative. It's basically aimed at the developing countries. So the connectivity and infrastructure, telecommunications and people-to-people exchange, it's all related to the developing countries, basically. So I think we are in a globalized world. Globalization is facing many challenges. We had my friend Professor Graham Allison he hit his trap that the geopolitical tension is getting really serious. But also we had the Kinderberger trap, which means that one rising economy, a country with the existing larger power, the global public goods is really facing shortage. For example, when US was replacing UK as a big power in the world, there's a late 20s economic crisis because there's not enough global public goods or policies to safeguard the global economy. So what China is doing, that since China becomes second largest economy, it's really good for China to launch some global initiative. And I think the Belt and Road Initiative is really great. I mean, I heard many developing countries, including many ambassadors, told me, look, Henry, we haven't heard any major plan in the world. I mean, last time we had a plan, it's Marshall Plan for Europe. But then, we haven't heard any new global development plan. And the World Bank has also reduced its lending, and many development banks have slowing down. So it's only China launched Asian Investment Infrastructure Bank. China launching this global Belt and Road Initiative for the developing countries. Of course, this initiative is not perfect. This is not, it's evolving. Actually, CCG, my think tank, we are proposing that why not we get the Belt and Road Initiative more multilateralized. Let's get World Bank, let's get ADB, AFDB, and Inter-American Development Bank, all development banks to join this. And AIB can be also a key player there. So we hope that we can multilateralize that rather than just bilateral MOUs and things like that. You talk about Sri Lanka. Yeah, Sri Lanka is really the one that had the changing of the government. They talk about this so-called debt trap. But actually, the total debt that Sri Lanka has, China probably accounts less than 10%. And then there's no debt trap issues. And basically, and then there's a company called Rhodium Investor Group, very famous in the US. And then they have done a series of studies. And then they collect about 40, 50, Belt and Road project. And they find that over majority, 90-some percentage are no such an issue. There's a few cases of that, but the payment is delayed and rescheduled. And there's probably only one case of or something have a little bit problem like that. So it's overly exaggerated case of Sri Lanka. But in fact, you have more successful stories. China Laos Railway is open, it's booming, and provide a lot of benefit to the Lao economy. And then we have this new railway going to be open in Indonesia. We have a new railway open in Thailand. We have a new railway open in Malaysia. I mean, who are doing big projects these days in the world for developing countries? We have African, cross-African railway as well, and all very economically beneficial to the local economy, and welcomed by local economy. And so there's no other country basically doing those MAC projects, and except China. So I think it's a lot of unfair criticism towards China. But the reason for that is China is not in an English domain. China does not influence the global media. 90 to 95% global influential media is controlled by the U.S. and the West countries. So if they are not, if they have a color glass view in China, I mean, China is looked at very badly from time to time. So that's Chinese voice is not clear enough. But I would say now there are some consensus now. They all felt infrastructure is important. President Biden proposed a B3W, EU leaders proposed global gateway, and China has Belt and Road Initiative. Why can't we all work together for the global south? Rather than we really criticize each other, I mean, finding a small problem and maximize. But of course, I mean, I'm not saying Belt and Road is perfect. It certainly has problem. It certainly has a challenge. Nobody has done this before, but we can certainly improve. We can certainly enhance. But bottom line is, if China is willing to do something gigantic like this to help the developing world, let it be. Let's improve it. Let's carry on, rather than we totally deny this and then saying this is a private agenda of China or whatever. China never sent any soldiers anywhere, never colonized any places, never launched any war. I mean, this is economic globalization, as I said. So I think we should support that, and we should get all the world organization, World Bank, WTO, all those, IMF and to participate. Let's make a Belt and Road Initiative a global initiative, and that's really my hope.
Okay, great.
Thank you.
Well, we don't have any more questions, right? And we're almost
Yeah, we're almost there. Yes.
Yes. On that positive note, let's please join me to thank Professor Wang and Professor Huang for his moderation. Thank you very much for joining us from China today and for your very informative presentation. And to our audience, thank you for your questions, and please join us next week for our next CCS webinar focusing on how to read ancient Chinese philosophical text. And we'll send out your flyers to our listserv to everybody subscribe to our CCS faculty or community listserv. If you're not on it, please send an email or go on our website where you can find the information. So thank you very much, everybody. Thank you again, Professor Wang. Thank you again, Professor Huang, for your moderation. Goodbye, everybody. See you next week.
Thank you.
Thank you
all. Thank you very much.